Did you not make the following pledge, that you were going to publish information about at-risk properties before the Parliament summer recess? Have a listen to yourself speaking in Parliament and help us understand what you meant by it.
I can give a commitment that we will publish as soon as possible, and certainly before the summer recess.
And that hasn't happened, has it?
Well, we will publish. Look, this issue is new. It emerged over the summer.
Sorry to interrupt, but you made a commitment there to publish this, didn't you? Certainly before the recess, you said, and that hasn't been published.
That was about something else, because this is only an issue that's emerged over the summer.
So of those 52 schools where action was taken, is it fair to say that they were unsafe up until that point, that children were attending schools that were unsafe, with buildings unsafe?
Well, this evidence was emerging over time.
It's a simple yes or no, isn't it? They were safe or not?
We felt, having had that evidence, that those buildings, the parts of the school that had rack that was in a critical condition, was not safe.
They could have potentially collapsed?
Yes, and that's why we took action.
So how many school buildings now, or buildings within school grounds, are unsafe?
Well, as we say, we've identified rack in 156 schools. But what we're now doing is, in 104 of those schools, we felt, on the basis of expert advice, that the rack was not in a critical condition, therefore it was safe. Now, over the summer, other evidence has emerged of, in this country and outside England, and in non-schools as well. Indeed, even as late as last week, we had evidence that rack that had been regarded as safe actually failed. And that's why we took swift action to change the guidance and to change our approach, that where it was previously regarded as safe, we're now saying any rack identified in schools, we need to take that building or that room out of use. Those hospitals will be rebuilt under the new hospital programme.
And as far as schools are concerned, why have you not released a list of the schools affected?
We will do. But what we want to happen is we are talking to the schools, and the schools are talking to the parents. We want the school to be able to talk to the parents first before parents read about these issues in the media. We want the schools to concentrate on the mitigations and sorting out what they're going to do, working with the department, with all the support that we're giving them with a caseworker. We want the schools to concentrate on that, but we will release the list in due course.
So have all the schools that are affected been informed now?
The vast majority have. We've been calling them yesterday, but there are a few more that we're calling today. And those schools are now talking to parents about what's going to happen in their school tree.
But here's the thing. You talk about the huge surveys that you've conducted, the assiduous work that you're doing. Why is it only being made public with days to go prior to the children returning to their schools? Why wasn't this being addressed during the 6 or 7 week school holiday, when the builders could have come in and education would not have been affected?
Because the evidence emerged over the summer. Indeed, even as late as...
Why didn't we start it earlier, Minister? Well,
because
why did someone not say, and you know this far better than I, right, we're approaching the 6 or 7 week school holiday. I want to know how much rack we've got, because that gives the builders 7 weeks in which no one's education is in any way affected, and we can throw the builders at it.
But we were doing that really since 2022, finding out where rack is, sending in surveyors. But what has changed is the previous position had been that where the rack is in a critical condition, then we take that building or room out of use. What emerged over the summer was that where we thought rack, even though we've identified it, we thought it was safe. That was the previous advice. But over the summer, there were some instances in England and outside England where rack that had been considered safe actually failed. So over the summer, as I said, there were some instances where rack that we had thought was safe is no longer so. And so we took a decision over the summer. It's a very big decision to take.
Well, sorry, that report, Minister, that report included rack.
It was the condition of schools, wasn't it, that report dealt with?
So you thought it was safe and it's no longer safe?
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
So when you made that parliamentary statement, was it correct or incorrect?
Well, I can't remember what that particular thing is about, but what this is about...
It was about rack, Minister. It was about rack. It's what you said. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Look, we will publish the names of all the schools involved. What we want to happen, though, is we want parents to hear from the schools first.
Well, you failed to do that before summer.
I just want to get to the bottom of this. Was it then the local authorities and councils that didn't tell or didn't survey the schools efficiently that meant in 2018, when the report was out, that meant that you then had to ask for a survey last year and this year?
No, look, this was good advice that went to local authorities and trusts and dioceses about this issue that was emerging about RAC. What we did, and you seem to be criticising us for being more proactive than other governments around the world, is that we took a decision that we wanted to go further. We were proactively seeking out the evidence. So we decided in 2022 to send questionnaires to all the schools that have buildings or extensions in that period, 1950s to 1990s, so we could understand the extent of RAC in the system. The vast majority of those questionnaires that came back said there was no RAC. And even when they suspected there was RAC, it turned out they didn't have it. But we then sent surveyors in to look into the schools that thought they might have it, to identify the RAC. Now, at that point, in 2022, the advice was that provided the RAC is not in a critical condition, it's safe to continue to use the buildings. Where we identified in 52 schools that RAC was in a critical condition, we took immediate action with those 52 schools, and they have had remedial action, propping, or they've had to close some of those schools as well. So already we have taken action in 52 schools, more than any other country in the world.
So let's be clear, because we care about this country.
You say it's recent new information, but there still will be a lot of people who are concerned about the timings. As you say, we've known about a collapse of a school was put down to RAC in 2018, 5 years ago. And then in June, the National Audit Office said that a school collapse in England that causes death or injury was very likely. Couldn't the summer months have been spent putting into action some of these relocation that's needed now? And Unison are saying that you've squandered valuable months. Are they right?
No, they're not right, because the policy up until yesterday was that where we identify RAC, and we have been assiduous in identifying RAC in the school estate, where that RAC was in a critical condition, then we do take that action. And those measures have been taken already in 52 schools, where we've taken part of that school out of action, or indeed in a few cases, the whole school has been taken out of action, and we have put in alternative accommodation for those schools. So that's already been happening in 52 schools.
So as soon as the parents have been told, you'll then assemble a list and the list will be published. Costs, let me ask you about.
Well, when all the remediation measures are put in place and the schools are in a stable place, then we will publish the list, yes.
Term starts next week. Yeah. So, if you're waiting not just to inform parents, but to start the remediation work, you know the reality of this, Mr. Gibb. It'll be in the media in a day when this information is built. Why don't you just publish it?
Well, we will publish it. It's not really an issue for us. We just want
it's an issue for parents because they want it published and you're not publishing it.
In a couple of weeks, at the latest, we will have alternative accommodation, if necessary, in place. Or remedial work done in the school, if that's possible, to use props to prop up, to make it safe.
Would you be happy, in all honesty, Nick? Would you be happy with your nieces and nephews sitting in a classroom under a propped-up RSJ, which is a steel joist?
Yes, it is, because we're being very, very...
You'd be happy for your nieces and nephews to sit in a classroom under a ceiling held up by a steel girder on props?
Yes, because
we're like your nieces and nephews very much.
Minister, we've heard what you've had to say. By any stretch of the imagination, if I was to characterise this as incompetence and a disaster, I'm sure you would agree with me.
It's not at all, no.